Hello! Something very important if you ever want to win a game in 40k. The missions. Yes, you can build the best army. Yes, you can know all your rules. Yes, you can build the perfect combination, the perfect combo. But if you don't know the missions, you could lose. You will probably lose too. I make this experience in one tournament, in my second tournament. I lost one game because I prefer to kill another turnip bug. And I got, if I don't just stay in cover on the objective, I would gain more points and win the game. It was a very close game, so this could be important. Or I try to attack the enemy home field objective, and in this mission there wasn't any points for this, so it was just useless. So, first you have to choose. I will talk in this video about the missions in card decks in general, and then I make some in-depth in-depth look. Let's call it this, like that. If you what you have to consider if you have some of these rules, and some of that rules could be very important. For example, in this chosen battlefield, the player put the markers on the objective, on the battlefield. And if you do it right, you could put the markers a little bit better for you than for the enemy. Or delay reserves. If you have a lot of units in deep strike, you could be in trouble because you have to roll if they can come in. If you roll bad, they can't come in, and so could be a problem. Chilling rain is always good because there's no special rules. Or supply lines, you get an extra CP. If you, for example, if you know this rule is in all your missions, if you have, for example, Lord Solar in your army, then you can't use this rule. The enemy have probably more CPs than you accepted or you expected, and could be a little bit of a problem. Or the minefield, if you advance of a 6, you could sustain 1, you get 1 mortal wound. Probably not I don't know if this ever, any player had ever a problem with this, but a lot of people don't like this. But if you have an army which are a lot of close combat melee units, and you want advance a lot, that could be a little bit of a problem. Or if you think you need a command point reroll a lot, and then you have this Vox static is more expensive, that could be a problem. Another point where you get points, that is very important too. It's, for example, in Scorched Earth, you can burn objective markers, gain point for this, and you can't ever gain then point for this objective again. And you can burn the enemy home field objective for 10 victory points. Very funny. In this case, for example, I talked a lot about the special forces, with the Tempest Science. If you play this mission, you could probably make a big blob of Tempest Science to storm the enemy home field objective and burn it down. That could be an idea. If you don't play this mission, probably not so much. Or in one other, I don't know which I think it's this mission where some objectives disappear. It's probably very important which is this? I will go, when I go in depth, I will talk about this. In some mission rule, you have to remove objectives from the board. I think it's, I will see. And could be very important to know which objective is removed and which not. For say, know your missions is very important. Or the deployment. Could probably, if you see which deployment you play, or which, especially if you go to tournament, you know which will play in which round, you could at least think about it before. For example, you have not only the primary points, you have secondary points. For example, one of my 5 favorites was on all fronts and behind enemy lines. Behind enemy lines, you must be in the enemy deployment zone, and on all fronts, you must be in all corners of the board. In this case, being in the enemy deployment zone is a little bit of a problem, because the enemy deployment zone isn't that big, and if the fight is in this area, a lot of enemy units are here. Where if you play something like this, being here in the enemy deployment zone or in this corner, probably is much easier. Or if you play something like this, the armies will be in the front, and you can put one unit behind the building, one unit behind the building, you are in the enemy deployment zone. So this could be something to consider. Or I played one game with this deployment. I put all my units in this area because the enemy don't have any units in reserve. He could take units back in reserve, but I don't know it, so I have a problem. But you have to put some units in the backline to screen your backline. Could be, but the deployment zone isn't that big, so you have to consider this a little bit. And in tournaments, you don't have a lot of time to think about it, so that is something you could prepare. You know the missions, know the deployment, or get a plan for deployment. For example, you could a little bit put everything on one area and then crush the enemy army on this area, take this point and ignore this point. You could make a plan for it. Could be an idea. And or something like artillery are probably more useful in this deployment, because you have this is the long side of the board, and this here your normal range is more than enough. The secondary missions are also very important. That's the point where you need some units to go around the board and do stuff. You have two kinds of missions. You can take fixed missions. They are this simple. You can choose two missions for fixed. For example, something I like, behind enemy lines, or engage on all fronts, because they have similar conditions, so could be an idea. These missions you take before you start a game, or you can play the not fixed missions. Then you have all the cards on a stack, and every time you fulfill a target, or mission, you get a new mission. For example, and the idea is you don't know which mission you have at the moment. For example, your first mission could be no prisoners, then you gain points for killing something, or secure no man's land, and you get points for taking an objective, or something. Or then you have investigate signal. You need a unit in the corner of the board, or deploy teleport. You always gain more points if you don't have the tactic missions are you choose a target, or you draw two cards and get every turn. If you fulfill a mission, get another mission, you get more points for this. But for example, if you have a unit in position, for example behind enemy lines, if you have a unit in position, you have the fixed mission, you always gain 4 points every turn. And the enemy must remove your unit. If you have tactical, you gain one time 5 points. But this, if you start playing Warhammer 40k, if you start playing with a mission deck, or if you, for example, I want to play a real game 40k with a mission deck, you should at first consider which missions you take. For example, if you take something like assassination or bring it down, you probably don't need something like Tempesto Silence, because you don't want to go behind enemy lines and do stuff, or you don't want to investigate signals, because you can't take this anyway. And then you don't need units who can jump around the board. But of course, if you take assassination, something like an assassin would be a good idea, because they can easier kill characters. Or bring it down. Of course, if you want to destroy big stuff, you need to destroy big stuff. But if you play against, for example, a guard player who take only infantry, without a lot of monsters or vehicles, guard don't have monsters, of course, then you are in trouble, because you can't score your secondary points. That's something to consider. And that's something I never did in the game. I never saw a player did in the game. The gambits. If you lose the game, you can make a daring decision to win the game. For example, you can choose this delaying tactics, and then you get for every enemy unit locked in close combat, you get a chance to gain some points, and you can gain a score for 30 victory points. Could be enough to win the game. If you are very close, the enemy could be enough. yes, that's that topic. I will talk about everything in depth because I have read it myself the most time first. And then I will make some videos about, for example, about the missions, about the primary missions, about the deployments, and about the secondary missions. And of course, because that's must I read myself first, about the gambits. So, bye bye.